Hi, it's Brian. I have just returned from the Telluride Film Festival, my first visit ever to that festival. I saw 13 films, and I just recently put up my first review from the festival all about Poor Things, the new film by Yorgos Lanthimos starring Emma Stone and Mark Ruffalo. That's a movie I think is going to do very well at next year's Oscar ceremony. I gave Poor Things a 10 out of 10. It is an astonishing film, a visionary feast. And yet there is another film I saw at Telluride this past weekend that I loved even more. That film is Saltburn, written and directed by Emerald Fennell. I went into this one with high hopes, very, very high hopes. It was my number one most anticipated film of the festival. I'm a huge fan of Fennell's debut feature, Promising Young Woman, from a few years ago. Fennell won the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay for that movie, and Carey Mulligan was nominated for Best Actress. As soon as I first heard of Saltburn, I was intrigued. When I saw the cast that was involved, when I heard that it was kind of like a modern day Talented Mr. Ripley with that cast, with that writer-director, like I was on board. I was like, I need to see this movie right now. And when I heard it was announced to play at Telluride, I was just like, yes, I'm so excited for this. I went into that morning screening. It was a 9 a.m. screening with high hopes, and I went in not knowing really what to expect. I didn't watch that trailer that had dropped a couple days before. I wanted to go into this knowing as little as possible, and let me tell you, even though my expectations for Saltburn were sky high, Emerald Fennell still surpassed them. This is an amazing movie through and through. I loved every second of this. It had my name written all over it. The writing, the direction, the performances, the cinematography, the confidence, the insanity of this story, the sex scenes, the lust, the humor, the horror, everything about this movie was my jam. It is going to be kind of divisive. I can see a lot of people not really taking to it. You kind of have to go with Saltburn. You have to go with this one. It's not for everybody. There are some moments in the second half where I could not believe my eyes. I was like, what am I watching right now? Because like you think with the setup, you know where this is headed. You think, okay, Talented Mr. Ripley, I kind of have this all figured out. Trust me, you don't. Emerald Fennell has some surprises up her sleeve, and if you go with it, this is a wild ride that you will love, I promise. I mean, just from the opening minute of this movie, we get a flash forward, we get a little bit of one of the characters telling us something that's already happened, and then we flash back to the title, to this glorious shot that takes us all the way to this academic institution with the opening credits, this amazing song on the soundtrack guiding us into the story in a way, and into the life of our main character. Barry Keoghan from the Banshees of Inisherin is our lead, and he plays Oliver Quick. He's a new student at Oxford University. He's looking for friends. He eventually finds a friend, this math geek who he doesn't really click with, and the person he really wants to be friends with is Felix, the tall, gorgeous, hunky, charismatic guy on campus who Oliver sees pretty much right from the moment he arrives, and he is smitten. We don't know exactly the extent of his lust for him, if he's gay, if he's just taken with his personality and wants to be close to him, wants to be friends with him. It's never made super clear, like Oliver's sexuality at the beginning of the movie. You're not quite sure, is he in love with him? Does he just want to be friends? But Felix is one of those characters that people are drawn to, men and women. Jacob Elordi plays Felix. He is also playing Elvis in Sofia Coppola's new film Priscilla. And he is very popular, has tons of friends, lots of girlfriends. He doesn't notice Oliver at first. It's not until Felix has a flat tire on his bike that Oliver comes up and says, hey, do you want to take my bike to your class? I'll just walk back. Does this really selfless act, and Felix is appreciative, and as soon as he sees him at the bar later that night, he's like, come on over here, Oliver. Come with us. You're one of us now. And so Oliver finally gets to be in his group, and he starts to get closer to Felix as a friend. Oliver loves to spend every waking minute around Felix, almost to the extent where Felix is like, okay, I need some space. Like, you're not my boyfriend. Like, I need some space. It's always clear that Felix does not look at Oliver as like a romantic prospect, but Oliver definitely looks at Felix as someone he wants to be with more than just a friend, especially as the movie goes on. So I would say like the first 30-ish minutes of this movie is at Oxford University. It's kind of a college movie. There's a lot of scenes of them drinking, out with friends, taking girls back to their dorms. And then the movie has a shift, a big shift, when Felix invites Oliver to come with him for the summer to his family's sprawling, beautiful estate outside the city, where they're going to have some adventures together, learn more about each other, and basically just relax and have a summer of fun. At least that's what Felix is thinking. Oliver might have some other ideas up his sleeve. But at this point in the movie, about 30 minutes in, Felix really trusts Oliver. He's really come to like him and wants to spend more time with him around his family. And so we leave Oxford University to spend pretty much the rest of the movie at this estate where there's only a select few characters now, only like 5 or 6, and every single one of them is so specific, so interesting. Starting with Felix's mother, Elspeth, played by the incredible Rosamund Pike. Get ready for Pike's performance in this movie. It is comedy gold. It is lunacy in the finest ways. If you're a fan of Gone Girl, if you're a fan of Pike's work, you are going to love her in this movie. She is hilarious. Richard E. Grant is also fantastic in this as Felix's father, Sir James. He's a character that pretty much always just bows down to Elspeth. He's just kind of like going with the flow, where she has very high expectations for everybody in her orbit. She's really big on everyone having polite manners, wearing the right clothes to dinner. You cannot just show up in like a t-shirt and flip-flops to dinner at this place. Even if it's just the family, like they're just having a quiet dinner at home, you still have to wear like a tuxedo. Like you still have to get all dressed up and look pretty, look nice. One of my favorite details of this entire movie is that Elspeth does not like anyone having facial hair. She thinks facial hair is a major turnoff. It's almost like a phobia. Like she will not be around people with facial hair because she thinks it's not hygienic. So one of the things that Felix tells Oliver on day 1 at the estate is like, make sure you shave every day because my mom will not be happy to see any stubble. Like Elspeth is quite quirky, as you'll find out in this movie. And there's another friend from Oxford. There's Felix's sister. And there's Carey Mulligan. I am not going to give away who Carey Mulligan plays in this movie. She's only in a select few scenes. It's kind of an extended cameo. Don't expect a gigantic performance from Mulligan in here, but she is so funny. She is so great in this, in her 3 or 4 scenes. Get ready for Carey Mulligan in Saltburn. And so basically no spoilers here about the second half of the movie. I'm not going to tell you what happens, but it is wild. It is crazy. Insane. My foremost praise of Saltburn is Fennell's work as writer-director. I think she has outdone herself here. I loved Promising Young Woman. It was in my top 5 films of 2020. I think Saltburn is even better. I think she has grown as a filmmaker. Even though for the most part there's only 2 major settings in this movie, I do think from a directorial standpoint, she has grown. She has expanded her canvas, and she gives us images that are unlike anything I've seen in a film in a long time. She has, as a filmmaker, really honed her craft. She has such confidence behind the camera in this movie. She is swinging for the fences. She is a director unafraid to go to places you might not expect. There are scenes of striking sexuality in this. Not necessarily explicit, but like we get really close to the sweat, to the lust in at least, I want to say 4 or 5 moments in this movie that are just like charged with this intense energy that you don't often see in the movies. I was really taken with those moments. The camera is often moving with the characters, taking us from room to room of this estate. Some of her style reminded me of like the camera moves in Goodfellas. the way that Scorsese will just kind of like whip that camera around a room, take us here, take us there. Emerald Fennell, with her camera, with her storytelling, really brings this estate to life, and at the same time creates this mystery to the place. There are rooms we don't necessarily go into. There are dark spaces, both inside and outside, we get like fleeting images of, and there's always a sense that there's something disturbing happening beneath the surface of this place. And yet, as mysterious as this place may be, as thrilling as the narrative becomes in the second half, she does not lose sight of the humor, the comedy. This film is very, very funny. Kind of like what I talked about in my last video about Poor Things. No matter how serious some of the content may be, there is a sense of humor behind it all that makes the journey a little bit more palatable. And that's the case of Saltburn, even though we go to some very dark places in those last few scenes. There is this wicked sense of humor behind it all that I loved. If you take Saltburn too seriously, if you don't go with this, if you don't laugh at anything, you're probably going to walk away disappointed. I do think if you're taking everything as literal and you're not having any fun with it, if you're not laughing at anything, I do feel like Saltburn might not work for you the way it did for me and has worked for others I know who saw it and loved it at Telluride. I knew based on Promising Young Woman, which I also find very funny at times, like I knew that Saltburn was going to have that sense of humor, and I was ready for it from the opening scene. And so the ride that Emerald Fennell takes you on in this movie, if you go with it and you're open to the humor, you're open to some outlandish circumstances and events, like this is a great time at the movies. And it's just made me that much more excited for where Fennell's career is going to go from here. She has made 2 fantastic movies, and something she does really well is great casting. Saltburn lives or dies by its performances, by its actors, and boy, has she gathered an amazing ensemble in this, starting with Barry Keoghan, who is electric in the lead role. This is one of the best performances of the year. I would love to see Barry Keoghan be an Oscar contender for Best Actor. I don't think it's going to happen because that category is just going to be way too competitive, but Barry Keoghan is incredible in this movie. Kind of like what I talked about with Poor Things, Emma Stone really going for it. Barry Keoghan goes for it in Saltburn. He is not holding back at all. He's so effective in those early scenes when he's quiet, when he's just trying to get up close and personal with Felix. He wants to be in this guy's world. He's kind of shy at first, kind of a nerd, but as the movie goes on, he grows in his confidence. He starts shedding his clothing at times. He starts taking on elements of Felix's personality, that charisma that draws a lot of people toward him, including Felix's family. The way Oliver wants to be accepted, but also wants to have some power over these people, including Felix. That's where the movie gets really interesting. Like, how far will Oliver go to get what he wants is a big kind of piece of this movie. And Barry Keoghan is perfect casting for this role. He's able to show a variety of shades to this character to the point where you're not quite sure what exactly is happening behind the eyes, like what he really wants, how far he will go. But Barry Keoghan keeps us on our toes, and he's able to find that balance with a character who has a darker side, who has a lighter side, and astonishingly makes the viewer care about him even when he does some heinous things. Barry Keoghan was so good in The Banshees of Inisherin last year, and he is on another level in Saltburn. Get ready for the Keoghan performance in this movie. It is astonishing. Jacob Elordi is really good too, in a role that really could have been one note, just like the popular hot guy who everybody fawns over and there's not much to him. Like, it could have been one note in the screenplay, could have been one note in Elordi's performance, but he really makes something of this character. We understand that not everything is great in his life. He has worries, he has problems, he has issues with his family. Even though everything has been handed to him on a silver platter, not everything is glowing in his life. And he looks to Oliver as someone who can enrich not only his summer, but his life in general. He's always had a lack of really close friends, and he thinks Oliver can be that person. In the Q&A at Telluride, Fennell talked about how this was the hardest role to cast. And I think Elordi really hits this one out of the park. He's very sexy and charismatic, but he has some effective moments of quiet too, of pain, when he learns something about Oliver that upsets him in the second half. Like, he has a lot of really good moments in this movie that show that he is so much more than a pretty face. I was really taken by his performance in this. He's excellent. And then Rosamund effing Pike. Oh my god, you guys. I am starting the Best Supporting Actress Oscar campaign right now for Rosamund Pike. I loved her in this movie. Every second she is on screen, she is funny, she is wise, she is quirky. The way she takes to Oliver, her moments with Carey Mulligan are so funny. She plays a big, larger-than-life character, and yet she always remains grounded in a way that's really effective. Just everything about her in this movie, her line readings, her mannerisms, the way she'll look at somebody who's annoying her, like Rosamund Pike is delicious in this movie. I do think Saltburn is going to struggle to get Oscar nominations based on some of the subject matter in the film, but I would love to see Pike get a Best Supporting Actress Oscar nomination for this performance. It would be so well deserved. It would be an all-timer Oscar nomination. She is amazing in this. Just get ready for Pike's performance in Saltburn. And so what else can I say about this movie without spoiling much? Because trust me, you guys, there is a lot to talk about, especially with the last half hour. At some point after the movie has come out, I'll probably have to do a spoiler review, a spoiler follow-up, because it's kind of hard to talk about the second half of this movie without spoiling anything. I mean, something the movie really succeeds at is what Emerald Fennell talked about in the Q&A, wanting to make a movie about insatiable lust, about desiring someone so much you will do anything to be with that person. That idea is represented both visually and emotionally so effectively throughout the entire movie. Oliver is in lust, in love, obsessed with Felix, and will do anything in his power to be with him, to be in the space around him, to be with the people who mean most to Felix, including his family. And what I dug so much about Saltburn was Emerald Fennell not holding back. She's not concerned, like, well, maybe I shouldn't go that far with this idea. Maybe this scene should be a little bit more muted. No. Fennell is never interested in giving us anything less than greatness. There is not a single scene in Saltburn I didn't like. Some of it is shocking. There are 3 or 4 moments in this where I could not believe my eyes. I was like, okay, we're going there. We're going there. Okay. I mean, there is a moment in this movie where I thought it was ending, and I was like, is she going to end this movie on this image? Holy shit. Oh my God. I actually thought that would have been too far, and I was happy the movie had another 10 to 15 minutes. I was like, okay, Emerald, that might have been too much of an image to end the narrative on, so I was happy there was more to go. But yeah, just when you think she's not going to take it that far, she does. Like, she really does, and especially Barry Keoghan is on board to do whatever his writer-director wants him to do. I mean, there are so many great moments in this. I don't want to spoil. All I'll say about one of my 2 or 3 favorite scenes is that it's a lunch scene. It's a pretty quiet scene, and it is so haunting and tragic, but also insanely funny. Like, so funny, I didn't even really know how to react. Like, a fairly long scene in the second half that is bonkers insane. That I was just like, oh my God. Emerald Fennell, what are you doing to us right now? There is a scene, I'll say, with a bathtub. A close-up of a bathtub that is going to be imprinted on my brain for the rest of my life. Thank you, Emerald Fennell. And then I'll just say this about the last shot of Saltburn. It is my favorite final shot of a movie in years. I cannot remember a final shot of a movie I was this in love with that stuck the landing this hard. that made me cheer when we cut to black. For a lot of the movie, I was like, how is she going to end this? Like, how do you end this story? It's so out there. It's so wild and creative and unpredictable. Like, where does this end? Where do we leave the audience? And the absolute insane final shot of Saltburn with the song chosen, with the moving camera, I was just in heaven, you guys. I was in heaven. The last shot is so brilliant, and it's going to make you want to revisit this movie over and over again. Now, as I've brought up a couple times already in this video, I don't think Saltburn is going to be a big Oscar player. I think the 3 categories it has the best shot to get into are supporting actress for Rosamund Pike, best original screenplay for Fennell, and best cinematography. The cinematography of this movie is luscious, gorgeous. I could see that getting a nomination. I do think because Fennell won the Best Original Screenplay Oscar for Promising Young Woman, I would not count her out for getting another nomination for Saltburn in that category, even though this is a much crazier movie than Promising Young Woman. I feel like if there's enough love for it, it might get into Original Screenplay. And then depending on how competitive Best Supporting Actress is, like, I would love to see Pike get in there. She, of course, has 1 Oscar nomination behind her for Gone Girl in the Best Actress category. I would love to see her get into Best Supporting Actress for Saltburn. I would also love for Barry Keoghan to get into Best Actor. That would be the greatest surprise on Oscar nominations morning. I don't think it's going to happen, but I would vote for him. He would be in my top 1 or 2 slots. He is incredible in this movie. I mean, as I wrap up here, Saltburn is not necessarily a perfect film. I just loved it, went with it every second of this movie. I was delighted. I was shocked. I was surprised. I was just so into this from minute 1. I'm a huge fan of The Talented Mr. Ripley from '99 and stories of obsession, of lust, and having the stars of this movie be 2 beautiful, charismatic, interesting actors who play off each other so well. And then the use of the university setting, the setting of this large estate, the medley of tones and genres. It borders on horror in the second half, the sexual scenes, the intimacy, the wild, dark humor of the entire narrative. Like, this movie was my jam. It might not be for everybody. It might not be for you. I know there have been people who didn't like it, but there were also a lot of people at Telluride who agreed with me that it was their favorite film of the weekend. I do think Saltburn is a movie you're either going to love or hate. I can't imagine there's going to be a lot of like mixed reviews of this where you just walk out and shrug and you're like, 5 out of 10. It was fine. Like, I feel like you're either going to go with it, give it an 8, 9, 10 out of 10, or you're going to say, this is nuts. This is not for me. 2 out of 10, 3 out of 10. There are going to be those people who hate this, and that's fine. Again, it's not going to play a big role in award season, but for this movie, this time, I don't really care. I love Saltburn. I can't wait to watch it again when it opens in theaters. I can't wait to eventually own the Blu-ray and have it be a part of my collection where it belongs, because I am going to be seeing this movie over and over again. Emerald Fennell has crafted a gorgeous, exciting, creepy, hilarious new masterpiece. I give Saltburn a very enthusiastic 10 out of 10. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and stay tuned in the coming days for more reviews from the Telluride Film Festival, including Naiad, The Holdovers, and All of Us Strangers. We'll see you next time at the Awards Contender.